Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very good day to you. Welcome to another edition of Parenting Today, where we help you circumvent some parenting pitfalls and also help you understand your child's inner and outer holistic development, all with the grace and the guidance of the Almighty, as well as an example of the Prophet ﷺ. And today we focus on hearing, yes, your ears. Very soon it will be World Hearing Day. That is on the 3rd of March. And we have Year X Foundation in studio with us, elaborating on this topic and just to keep that conversation going on the development, what could possibly happen, and also some pitfalls to understand your child's hearing as well as yourself. Welcome to Nosheen Dawood, who is our audiologist, a clinical educator and lead audiologist for Year X Foundation, which is a NGO. She also lectures at Wits University and did her master's on smartphone hearing services. So I'd love to hear more about that. But firstly, just like to kick off and understand World Hearing Day. How long has it been around, and why should we even, think to highlight something? We know that people say, oh, it's World Hearing Day on the 3rd of March. And often the theme this year, which you guys are looking at, is hearing care for all, and let's make it a reality. And often we say, there's this idea or this theme, but the focus sometimes is not understood by hearing itself, we say, let's focus on hearing care for all. Hearing. When we say we hear and we listen, but at the end of the day, people also don't appreciate their ears. They don't appreciate the work that it goes, that's actually happening within the ear, how you need to care for it. But let's first focus on the theme, and we'll get all into the nitty-gritties from your foundation and the work you guys are doing. Hearing care for all. What does that mean?
So firstly, thank you for having me on your show. So this year, the focus is on ear and hearing care for all, and the idea is to make it a reality. This highlights the importance of integrating ear and hearing care into primary care. And this is an essential component of universal health coverage, which is what the UN is heading for, and the World Health Organization as well. So the key messages here are that ear and hearing care is actually a common problem amongst most communities. It's a lot more prevalent than we think. And about 60% of the ear problems that we find can actually be treated at a primary healthcare level. And the idea behind this is then to facilitate ear and hearing care through training and capacity building at a primary healthcare level where we can reach the masses.
So Year X Foundation is involved, and of course their primary focus is ear and hearing. What are they doing for World Hearing Day?
So just to give you a brief background, the Year X Foundation is an NPO that strives to overcome the gaps in access to hearing and ear care. So for this World Hearing Day, we are actually quite busy. We are a partner-centric organization, so we've got two legs that will be running events for World Hearing Day. The first being in the Western Cape, where we have partnered with an ENT to provide training to primary healthcare nurses on basic ear care. Then we've got an ECD event, so an early childhood development center, where we will be training the caregivers at these centers to identify early signs of potential hearing loss and ear disease. And the third event that we have in place in the Western Cape, as part of the World Health Organization goals, we need to address policymakers. So we've got a meeting with the Department of Health on the discussions going forward about how can we prioritize ear and hearing care. And then here in the Gauteng province, we will also be reaching out to some ECD centers and feeding centers that often work with children, where we will be educating them on signs to look out for hearing loss.
What would you say is the gap that we don't quite understand and appreciate our ears for hearing?
So firstly, if we look at development in a child cannot learn if he cannot hear.
Very true.
So that is a core component of how we develop. I mean, just you and I speaking here today, if you haven't developed the speech and language skills at an early age, it makes it really difficult to communicate. And that has compounding effects in terms of your social development, your emotional development, your self-esteem. So it has a cumulative effect.
And just the role of an audiologist like yourself, you're a lecturer, you've done some work with this foundation as well, doing work with the foundation, and I'm sure you're seeing patients as well. But understanding the role of an audiologist when we are talking about our ears and our hearing, what do you guys do for us?
Okay, wow. So that is actually a very big question.
Okay.
There is a lot of speciality within the speciality.
Okay.
Audiologists have many roles, right from hearing loss to balance. But for today's topic, I'm going to focus on children. So in this case, you would get a pediatric audiologist who is responsible for newborn hearing screening and diagnostic testing.
Okay.
So basically, from the time the child is born, we can identify whether the child has hearing loss or not through various testing methods. And then as the child grows along and develops, we are there to determine whether the child is reaching his or her developmental milestones, particularly with speech and language, and also to facilitate optimal learning in the classroom. We need to ensure that children are receiving adequate care for hearing loss so that they can perform their best in class.
So much to do from a very young age when that little one is already born. Tell us
Definitely.
about the state of hearing loss in South Africa.
So according to the latest stats of the World Health Organization, there's about 34 million children who actually experience hearing loss worldwide. However, those statistics are actually higher in sub-Saharan Africa, where access to ear care is limited and sometimes not even existent. And in countries like South Africa, where newborn hearing screening is not mandatory, these children often go undetected or undiagnosed. And in addition, by the time the child reaches school age, they can actually develop acquired hearing loss through various streams like illness, hospitalization, or noise exposure.
And sort of to understand how that hearing loss affects the child, what are the effects or the signs and symptoms to watch out for?
So typically, hearing loss affects the development of speech, hearing and language development.
Okay.
So this will have an impact on your socio and emotional development. It also has a profound effect on the academic success and development of the child. So untreated hearing loss can result in a child not reaching his or her full potential, and there are usually poor social and vocational outcomes.
What would be the age that one could pick up, a hearing loss or a hearing issue? Because you said you guys can do testing with the baby from a very young age already.
Yes. So congenital hearing loss, which is usually when a child is born with a hearing loss, it can be identified and detected at birth, and it can be treated immediately as well. So with hearing loss, early detection is key. Yes. So interestingly enough, your hearing is actually fully developed at 20 weeks in utero.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why they say, listen, the baby can hear you in utero, talk to the baby, read stories, and they can even recognize your voice, possibly.
So yeah, that's why the baby is already used to the mom's voice by the time he or she is born.
What a brilliant phenomenon.
Yeah.
So is there any... So often they say, okay, the baby you mustn't make too much loud noises, or you should make loud noises so the baby can get used to. There's some myths and misconceptions about that. Just tell us about the baby's hearing and how attentive they are at a very young age when it gets getting used to or not to certain sound levels.
So like I said, the baby's hearing is already developed fully in utero at 20 weeks. So by the time the baby is born, he or she can be exposed to various kinds of sounds.
Okay.
It's just sort of a stimulus that they need to get used to and identify different sounds for speech development. However, the level of sounds can vary. It just shouldn't be excessive where it could cause a noise-induced hearing loss.
All right, so just to be, and we will talk about excessive and the warning signs and dangers around avoiding certain things when it does come to hearing. Thank you so much. We're chatting to Nosheen Dawood, audiologist, in studio with us as we highlight World Hearing Day. We talk about signs and symptoms of hearing loss just after this. Stay with us, don't go anywhere. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Remember, you can follow us live right now if you're watching us rather, over the lands and across the beautiful seas. You can do so on Hilaal.tv, and that is live streaming. Otherwise, you can wait for uploads on YouTube for the next day. And do request them from us via our various social media pages as we highlight World Hearing Day on the 3rd of March. We have lead audiologist from Year X Foundation in studio with us, an NPO that does some great work for those that need it when it comes to hearing. Ear and year, the focus of this year, ear and year. Care for all. Ear
Let's make
and
it a
hearing.
reality for all.
Yeah. Ear and hearing, care for all. Let's make it a reality for all. That is the focus for this year's theme. We spoke a bit about, we want to lead into signs and symptoms, but before we do that, give us a brief description on the development of a child's hearing. You've mentioned that it is already developed in utero. Is there anything else?
So basically, when a child is born, he or she can hear all sounds along the frequency spectrum.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't expose them to excessively loud levels of noise. But other than that, being exposed to different frequency levels is good for the child's development as they learn to identify different sounds as well as speech sounds, which is important for the development of speech and language skills.
And also often with some kids, as they get older and they're possibly on the spectrum, does hearing become an issue for them? And when does it become a problem that loud noises or they are loud, or when they become a little bit more intense about that?
So with different syndromes, you often can have hearing loss accompanied or as a symptom of the syndrome. For example, children with Down syndrome are at a higher risk of getting hearing infections because their ear canals are narrower or the eustachian tubes are more horizontal. Children with Usher syndrome, for example, also can have hearing loss as a symptom as part of the syndrome or sequence. However, getting back to children on the spectrum, it varies because the symptoms of the spectrum vary, and then you would also have to adapt your treatment program based on what their symptoms are. So for example, if the child is very sensitive to sound, you do get a disorder called selective sound disorder or sensitivity disorder, and it would be best not to expose those children to environments that make them unsettled. But I mean, that can only be advised by the pediatrician and physician.
So your first port of call, if you do find that there's an issue with your child, do you go and see your GP or do you try and make an appointment with an audiologist?
So there's different sides to it. If you find that it's a medical problem, like for example, if the child is experiencing recurrent ear infections or is constantly ill and is tugging at the ear, then we would go to an ENT. However, if you suspect that the child is not responding when calling them or the academic performance is being affected, then your point of call will be an audiologist, a pediatric audiologist.
Okay, so let's look at some of the signs and symptoms that does come up when it comes to hearing loss and how one can prevent it.
Okay, so early detection is key to addressing the adverse effects of hearing loss. Unfortunately, due to the systems in place, most children often go undetected and undiagnosed. But what is important to know is there are actually two types of hearing loss. So you get temporary hearing loss and then you get permanent hearing loss. About 60% of the temporary hearing loss can actually be treated before it becomes permanent. Having said that, some of the tips that we can look out for is ear pain. So a lot of children will complain of ear pain or tug at the ear. Sometimes it's accompanied by a discharge, what we call runny ears, that usually has a foul smell. Then you can take the child to your physician. If the child experiences recurrent ear infections, it's very important that they are seen by an ENT.
So what is recurring? Because you're thinking like once or twice is okay. What is recurring?
I would say recurring is more than 3 times within a period of 6 months.
Okay.
And also what is important is with children, they are actually at a higher risk of developing ear infections. Reason being, if you look at the anatomical structure of a child's eustachian tubes, our eustachian tubes are actually more horizontally shaped. More vertically shaped, whereas with children it's more horizontal. So that makes it more difficult to drain.
Eustachian tubes would just be the
So that is
canal.
your ear tube that is, sorry about the jargon. So that is your tubes that connect your ear to your nose and your throat.
Okay.
And the excess fluid usually drains out through those tubes, allowing less pressure build up and less fluid build up when a child has an infection.
Yeah.
However, in children, because it's so horizontal, they are likely to have a stronger pressure build-up and fluid build-up, which results in the ear infections being a bit more acute and more.
So it's also all about the structure and the elongation of how it's positioned. And we always thought, like, why is it that kids are a little bit, just because they're kids and they can pick up all sorts of germs?
Yeah.
So it's actually about that. Wow,
and that is why you also actually have grommets to keep the ears open, so that the ears are ventilated and just to allow that excess fluid to drain out.
What are grommets? Let's talk about that.
So grommets are basically ear tubes that are inserted into your eardrum. It's basically just to keep the ear ventilated and open, so that there isn't a pressure build up behind the eardrum that usually causes ear infections and causes the rupturing of the eardrum.
And it's more common than not, like recent days, that children are getting that. Does it got to do with the change of weather, altitude as well? Does that disrupt it in any way, or allergies?
So allergies can predispose children to picking up flu-like symptoms, which can then turn into, if not treated, or if there's any bacteria involved or viral infection, it can escalate to an infection. However, also the change in pressure in the eardrum. With children, it's a lot more difficult to equalize, like I said, because of their anatomical structure, which also puts them at a higher risk of developing ear infections.
Okay, and let's talk about traveling. You know, whether by car and of course plane is a more serious impact. They often say in the planes, when the plane is going up or coming down, you know, let the child breastfeed, let them suck on the bottle, or give them their dummy. Please just explain all of that.
So when a child sucks on the dummy or yawns or even drinks, it opens and closes the eustachian tubes, which is those same tubes connecting the ear, nose, and throat, allowing them to equalize the pressure from the atmosphere and within the ear. And that is what avoids the buildup of excess pressure, which usually causes the pain when the plane lands or takes off.
Okay. So and for adults, would it be the same?
It would be the same. So adults are usually advised to chew gum.
and the excessiveness of it being exacerbated with the kids is because, again, the explanation of where the
anatomical structure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any things that we need to be aware of to avoid, and then even possible myths and misconceptions? Because often you see an ENT or an audiologist and say, like, do not use earbuds, but they're readily available. Why are they selling it if we're not supposed to use it? So just, you know, clear up the air with regards to that, and the do's and don'ts.
Okay, so I was actually coming back to that. So a common cause of temporary hearing loss is actually earwax impaction. Okay. So what happens here is people tend to use cotton buds, and this causes a buildup of earwax, which in turn results in a blockage to the conduction of sound in the ear. And this is what causes a temporary hearing loss in adults and children, and often they don't hear as optimally as they should. Which brings me to my next point. You should not insert anything inside your ears. No earbuds, it's cotton buds. No matches, no keys. The ear is smart enough to clean itself.
Oh, really?
There's even this joke that you shouldn't insert anything that's smaller than your elbow into the ear, and they really mean it.
So and the elbow's really big.
That's exactly it. So the ear is very smart. It cleans out itself. Wow. It moves out all the dead cells, and there's no need to insert anything to the ear. And what's also interesting is that minimal earwax is actually good for the ear, as it lubricates the ear and it avoids, or rather eliminates the production of bacteria in the ear.
So So I'm going to say I use cotton buds, earbuds, and from time to time you actually see the wax on the cotton bud. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? So firstly, I know I'm not supposed to use the buds.
You shouldn't be using it. And it almost gives you like a false perception that you're taking out the wax.
Yes.
Or you're removing the wax.
Cleaning your ear.
There's no need to remove the wax. And what your ear canal, it actually looks like this, the canal. And by inserting the ear, the earbud or cotton bud, you're moving the wax from the top down and the wax from the bottom up. And that's actually causing a blockage. So when sound is being conducted through, it actually stops that sound. It almost sounds like you're underwater.
Yes.
And
I want to talk about water. I want to talk about using the earphones, the headphones, and you know, the do's and don'ts, is excessive levels of noise or not. And then also about your masters, because I mean, you did do it on smartphones, hearing services. So we want to get more information about that. But we're chatting to a lead audiologist for HearX Foundation on World Hearing Day, celebrated on the 3rd of March, and something to keep conversations about and to highlight that maybe you just needed your ear checked out and don't clean it, because apparently it's a self-cleaning organ. More just after this, back in a moment. Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. A very good day to you. Remember, you can interact with us via our WhatsApp and social media pages for any of your comments, questions and queries around hearing loss and hearing issues. And as I said, do not go and clean your ears, because that's what the audiologist recommends. In studio is lead audiologist for HearX Foundation, based out in Western Cape, here in Johannesburg as well, and doing some great work as an NPO. We were still talking about the signs and symptoms, the do's and don'ts. And then we want to get into your master's paper, because it is around smartphones and hearing, and that's what we have all the time. You know, we have our earbuds, we have the idea, yes, of our children. Half of them, you know, have the wireless earphones in their ears most of the time. And sometimes when you're talking to them, you think, okay, is there a hearing problem? But no. Is there a thing called selective hearing though? That's a question I've always wanted to know.
So interestingly enough, I think the wives are probably going to kill me after I say this. But what happens is when you lose your hearing loss, you typically lose the hearing in the high frequencies first.
Okay.
And women's voices are in that frequency range. So when the men start complaining and saying they can't hear their wives, they're actually not lying.
So it's not, it's the actual thing that's happening to them?
So they often say it's selective hearing, but part of it is scientific.
It's medical.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So not really, but there is a thing called selective hearing because of medical facts. All right. Some of the do's and don'ts. One, we spoke about no matches, no cotton buds, earbuds, as they call it. They're not for your ears. Use it for something else, your makeup or something. You've mentioned the matches, and then you've also get that earwax candle thing. What is that, and why do people use it? Should we be using it?
So there are other methods of removing earwax. However, that is not medically approved.
Okay.
So that is just another type of method. I haven't personally tried it, so I don't know if it works. But I would say for safety factors, stick to the medical stuff.
Putting wax candle in your ear or something, and then they've got a plate with then they actually pull the wax out. Is it a good thing to be pulling wax out of your ear?
Like I said, it's only a problem if the wax is excessive, which is usually as a result of using cotton buds. However, minimal amounts of wax are actually healthy for your ear canals. Like I said, it lubricates the ear and it avoids the buildup of bacteria.
Okay, so more of the do's and don'ts. I'm sure there are many. Let's talk about that.
So let's go back to excessive noise levels.
Okay.
Like you said, children nowadays are basically born with tablets in their hands, and with AirPods being a fashion statement nowadays, there is exposure to a lot of noise levels. You should not be listening to sounds or noise at excessive noise levels, which is usually about 80 dB. That 80 decibels, dB decibels. So and for longer than 8 hours consecutively. So it's very important to take breaks and ensure that you are looking after your ears. Also, if you work in an environment or your occupation requires a lot of background noise, it's important that you are wearing the appropriate ear protection to avoid a noise-induced hearing loss.
Okay. So when you say appropriate durations of hearing or listening to, loud noises through the ears, we spoke about the eyesight, giving a 20-20 break. So after 20 minutes, look away for 20 seconds at something 20 feet away. Not sure if that is the real concept of 20-20, but that's what I heard. Tell us about the hearing. How long should we be listening to things? Because you say not excessively for 8 hours, longer than 8 hours. Is that the limit?
Well, it's not the limit, but I don't have a 20-20 rule. But
recommendation from the
audiologist.
Recommendation,
I would say you need to take regular breaks. I mean, it's also mentally exhausting if you are constantly listening to this loud noise. Your brain has to process it as well. So I would say take hourly breaks at least.
Any myths and misconceptions about our ears? One that I never knew was that it's a self-cleaning organ. And that's not a myth, that's an actual fact. But for us to hear it from the horse's mouth, the specialist, that it is. And how is it that it's a self-cleaning organ?
So what happens is, like your body exfoliates the dead skin cells, the same thing happens within your ear canals. So you've got a bit of wax to keep it moist and, like I said, eliminate the bacteria. So as the body exfoliates, the skin in the ear canals exfoliate as well, and they push out all the dirt into the outer side of the ear. So all that's necessary to clean your ear is just to wipe the outer ear, but nothing should be going inside the ear.
Because that's actually what I was going to find. So how do you clean your ear? It's on the outside.
You can just wipe the outside.
So you can use just a tissue over your hand and use your fingers.
I mean, like the rest, like you clean the rest of your body, you can clean the outer side of your ear.
Okay, so the work the foundation does, HearX Foundation. Tell us about what you mentioned of what it's up to for the highlight of this World Hearing Day. But overall, the organization has been around since 2016, you said.
Yes.
So the current work that it has been doing, why was it established? And, where can people find you guys?
Okay, so this is the most exciting part. The HearX Foundation was founded by our sister company, the HearX Group. Okay. The HearX Group was founded by a professor from the University of Pretoria, s1ep21, very well known in the audiology field, where he decided to come up with a solution to address the concerns in access to hearing care. So conventionally, audiology equipment was very bulky and expensive, and often it was just very difficult to access the masses of people. And he came up with this concept at the University of Pretoria, where they decided to develop audiometers on smartphones. So they tried to make the most of using smartphone technology to reach as many people as possible.
Oh. And what is audiometer on smartphone?
Audiometer is a machine used to test hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and then they would actually install that on the smartphone?
So they basically turn the smartphone into an audiometer. They use the smartphone, the existing features of the smartphone. It works off an app that is very user-friendly and can be operated by non-professionals, which allows hearing screening services to be implemented in communities where there isn't access to an audiologist.
Wow. Yeah. And then how can one find this audiometer on one cell phone? Do you have to go via the HearX Foundation?
So yes, so it's available at the HearX Foundation. It's not available to the public. However, there are other apps available that have been developed by the HearX Group, including the World Health Organization app for hearing tests. You can check it out. It's available on their website. It's called, and then there's also South Africa's national hearing test. I'm sure you've seen Michael Moll advertise for it, which is called HearZA, and it's free to download from your app store.
Okay, great. And the work throughout the year that the HearX Foundation does?
So one of the programs that we have running is called the 3E program in the Western Cape. So 3E stands for Ears and Eyes for Education. Going back to what I said about you need to be able to hear well, to learn well. So this project focuses on sensory screening, where we've partnered with, so we're a very partner-centric company, and we've partnered with a company that offers vision screening of our smartphone platform, where we can consecutively run hearing screening tests and vision screening tests. And we do this prior to the child entering the formal schooling system, so that we can identify any barriers in terms of their hearing or vision development and address them so that it does not affect them at an academic level.
So how can we reiterate the fact that there's these do's and don'ts about hearing? Because often there's these old wives' tales and said, oh no, that's worked and that cleans my ears. And yet the specialists are not recommending it.
So I think the first thing that you can start with is monitor your child's speech and language development. There's also a wonderful tool available on the World Health Organization website where you can look out for speech and hearing milestones. It's also important to acknowledge if your child has been exposed to what we call ototoxic medication. So sometimes when they are in hospital, some of the medication can be damaging to their ears. It's also important to any hospitalization or illness and any cause for concern, they should see their physician in terms of medical problems. And if they are worried about the speech or hearing development, they can see an audiologist.
What are some of the signs to watch out when it does come to the speech being affected through the hearing? Is it delayed speech? Is it something that my child's just not talking at the age of 1 or 2? And often boys, they're quite late bloomers. So what are some of the signs that you can recommend that, you know, okay, this is a fear, this is a worry, and sometimes the sixth sense of the mother does, you know, aid to either being overprotective or over worried mommy, but it can also lead to something positive that she can have checked out.
Well, I think firstly we need to validate when a mother has concern, because the mothers usually end up knowing their children the best. Also, the teachers are very aware of it. They would usually see that the child is not coping in class. But typically at home, what you could look out for, especially in the younger ones, is if you call them and they don't respond, especially if you're calling them and they're not facing you. You could also look at, in the event that they're tugging their ears a lot or crying, you would also look at their milestones. Are they reaching the typically developing speech and language and hearing milestones? And any other general cause for concern, if the child seems like they are not speaking age appropriately or struggles to follow instructions, those things would definitely bring up a cause for concern.
Okay. And as you said, if it's a pain issue, see the GP. If not a hearing thing, go and see a specialist audiologist. In studio, we have Nushin Dawood in studio with us, lead audiologist at Year X Foundation. We'll chat more, and I want to delve into her smartphone masters that she did. And remember, any of your questions, comments, and queries, we also love to hear them coming because they do add value to the show, so we can take it to another level. Back in a moment. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very good day to you. It is World Hearing Day, Year and Year Care for All. And that is the highlight for World Hearing Day, 3rd of March. And it is something, as we know and spoke about, a self-cleaning organ. So don't go and clean it inside, but just you can clean it a little bit outside. In studio, we have audiologist, lead audiologist for Year X Foundation, as well as lecturer and educator, a clinical educator, and does some brilliant work with this foundation, which we'll also chat about more, and you know, people can find information on. But I want to talk about your masters and your smartphone hearing service paper that you've done, your research. Why choose the subject?
So conventionally, it was very difficult to reach most people with audiology services, given that the equipment was very bulky, it was expensive, there aren't enough audiologists to service all the people with hearing care problems. So as a result, I was then employed by the Hear X group, who came up with this brilliant idea and developed developed audiology tools based on a smartphone that could be used to reach millions of people. And this is what really excited me, and I was ready to use this technology to implement and reach the people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what did you say were some of your findings that was quite interesting that stood out for you?
So the findings was that compared to conventional audiology, this was a method to reach many people on a large scale, and it didn't necessarily need to be operated by a professional, but rather facilitated by, for example, school health nurses or primary healthcare nurses who are in positions to implement such services, and then that would facilitate referrals, almost cutting out the process to go out and detect these kids, but involve it as part of the process, where the children just get automatically referred when needed to, instead of only once there's a problem they come out and reach out for the service to an audiologist.
What is the referral process for those that are not able to see specialists like yourself privately? I know that many of the outlying areas, or possibly, you know, the informal settlements, there's possibly a clinic close by, but what is their right with regards to, you know, getting the necessary help, or possibly even just the test that they need?
So in South Africa, based on our clinic system, in the primary healthcare sector, each informal settlement should have a local clinic, and some of those local clinics might have access to audiology services, but that would be your starting point. If they don't have access to an audiologist or audiology services, they would provide you, they would up-refer to a clinic or a district hospital where there is access to audiology services. Not everyone has access to pediatric audiology services, but starting at your primary level of care, they will facilitate the referral to your closest pediatric audiologist.
And where can one get more information on, just whether we're Googling, whether, you know, it's available at the clinic, and also safe information? Often you think, like, you know, I'm on this website, is this the correct information of how to clean my ears or how to care for my ears? What are some of the safe websites, and where can one get more information?
So a general website that is really reliable would be the World Health Organization. If you specifically Google World Hearing Day 2023, there are wonderful resources available that you can access in terms of hearing care. And besides that, the HearX Foundation, as the HearX Foundation, we are very active on social media. So you can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook, and you can also email us at info@hearxfoundation.org.
And just quickly on babies, how can parents protect their babies' ears during development?
So the parents should not expose their babies to excessive noise levels, like we discussed earlier. They should be aware of speech, language, and hearing milestones if they can. And if there's any cause for concern, ensure that you follow the correct referral routes.
And the clinic sisters at the hospital often, you know, you ask a question and possibly maybe, you know, they might not know with regards to hearing. Are they, you know, just generally equipped with how to care for the baby's ears, and, you know, things to watch out for on the ears or around the ears if they are worried?
So ideally that would be the case, but unfortunately that is not where we are at as yet. And that is why we are working so hard on promoting ear and hearing care for all. And sorry, coming back to your last question, I also forgot to mention the most important thing is to get your child's hearing screened. Like I said, from the time the child is born, you can have your baby's hearing screened. So I think that would be the first step.
And your baby's hearing screen, I've been approached by an audiologist actually when I just, like a day after I gave birth, and they came around, and I thought, why would they want to test my baby's ears? But it was quite interesting, the information that she parted and that she gave me on where the child's development, as you said, in utero already, it's fully developed, and protecting baby's ears and sort of the loud noises and making the baby used to was an interesting conversation I had with her. Although I was breastfeeding at the time, and she said, no, I'll come back when you're not as busy. So it was actually so nice and polite for them to do that, and to understand, for us to understand that development is there already when the baby. So we want to not also tippy-toe around our baby at that young age, but also make them used to. How can we understand sort of that they're hearing at the comfortable level, and when they do have some irritation to sound?
Well, I guess in babies, you will, the moment they are unhappy, it's always accompanied by a cry. So that would be your first cue. But typically, if it's within a healthy noise exposure level, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. So when you say healthy, is
I would say under 80 decibels. We typically talk at about 60 decibels.
Okay.
So between 60 and 80, I think it's still safe.
So let's just mention the safe websites where people can find Here X Foundation as well. And also access sometimes to, on the road, people don't necessarily have, we hope that they do have smartphones, that they can, but everybody doesn't have that available to them. So mostly in the informal settlements, there should be a clinic. And what should they actually, the questions that they should ask when they're visiting the local clinic?
So before even getting to the questions, there are different, there are already, being in South Africa, the HIV rate was quite high over the last few years. Okay. And it's important to be aware that medications like your antiretrovirals or TB medication is actually a cause of, it's ototoxic, which can cause hearing loss. Oh, wow. So coming from that background, it's important to be aware of these things. And there are some programs in place around the country where they actually monitor whether these medications are causing hearing loss or not. Okay. And there has been some solutions where they've worked around the side effects of hearing loss and have actually come up with new solutions where they aren't as bad side effects. Okay. But it's important to be aware of that. And when they get to the clinics, it's important to also it's important that the clinic sisters and the primary healthcare staff, which is what we are emphasizing this World Hearing Day, are aware of such issues so that they can refer to the appropriate practitioner.
Okay, and then the safe websites you mentioned earlier again?
So the World Health Organization.
WHO.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you can contact us on info@hearexfoundation.org. And we've got our social media pages as well, so you can just follow Here X Foundation.
Great stuff. Your last words before we play out with our video that you're going to share with us as well to our viewers on the importance of this year's theme, Ear and Hearing for All?
So from my side, although the topic focuses on primary care, and they often refer to primary healthcare workers like nurses or medical staff on the ground, I think this begins at home. I mean, parents, as teachers, as general community members, we are constantly exposed to children, and it is important for us to be aware of early signs of hearing loss. And if we do see that, it's important that we have a cause for concern, it's important that we get the right interventions in place.
And always early detection is important. So thank you so much, Nosheen Naidu, for your, Daud, Nosheen Daud, for your information that you've shared with us today. And we hope that Here X Foundation grows from strength to strength and keeps up the brilliant work that they're doing. Thank you so much for your time. That was Nosheen Daud, clinical educator, lead audiologist for Here X Foundation, which is an NPO as well as lecturer at Wits and the University of Pretoria. But let's now take a look at the video where it comes to the focusing on general smartphone usage reaching the masses. Take a listen.
Annually, 1 million children enter the schooling system in South Africa. But currently there are no systematic screening programs in place to provide hearing healthcare services to these children. And that is due to a lack of trained personnel and expensive equipment. Early detection and intervention is important for these children to ensure healthy hearing for healthy learning. With this project, we map early childhood development centers in underserved communities in Cape Town, and we're in the process to provide 10,000 children with hearing screening services with the EarScreen application that we developed. The EarScreen app provides clinically valid tests that can be operated by non-professionals that's linked to a cloud-based data management platform. It provides affordable access and linkage to hearing healthcare services, making it possible for Zinhle to be screened at her ECD facility by a community worker.
I'm very happy to be part of this project because it's changing life to the children.
My name is Singatwa. I'm the mother of Mbalentle Zwele. You mean a lot to us. You're helping us a lot. We as a parent, we really appreciate, guys. It means a lot. We never know where we can be without you. Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed that one, and that's a wrap from Parenting Today. I hope you join us next week, same time, same place. Wassalamu alaikum and goodbye for now.